Guys, Lubaltran here, the IT veteran, and in today's video, pag-uusapan naman natin ano nga ba ang isang network engineer or network administrator. So let's get started. Let's go and talk about yung IT career ng pagiging isang network engineer or network administrator. So ano nga ba ang trabaho ng isang network engineer at saka network administrator? Now, this position is very close to me. Ay, napaka dear to my heart, kumbaga, ng IT position na to because this is where I started as a network engineer noong 2005-2006. Network engineer ako since 2005-2006, and as you can see dito sa screen ko, yan yung pinakaunang IT certification that I have achieved, galing kay Cisco certifications. Okay, so this is the very first certificate na na-receive ko by passing yung Cisco exams. So I was already as a network engineer since 2005-2006. So it's been close to 15 years already that I have been a network engineer, and this position really took me quite a very long way in terms of sa career ko as an IT professional, and this is where everything started. Now, over the years, yung 15 years na yon, I have actually upgraded myself in terms of yung sa skill sets ko. I've already received my CCNPs and in terms of enterprise and security, kasi ito na yung mga bagong tawag sa IT certifications ng Cisco kasi kare-refresh lang ngayon 2020. And I'm also a Cisco certified cyber operations. Okay? Now, hindi lang sa Cisco ako nag-specialize sa ngayon. I'm also a software certified engineer. I'm a Ubiquiti wireless admin. I'm also a RACOS certified solutions engineer, and meron din akong Network Plus na PIA. So, pero really, nag-start yon lahat sa pagiging isang network engineer ko. So, i-discuss muna natin ano nga ba yung difference ng network engineer and network administrator. So, katulad din nung last video natin tungkol sa system engineer, sysad engineer, tsaka sysad administrator. Ang ibig sabihin ng engineer is yung position na to designs and builds, while the administrator is more in terms of sa administration and maintenance ng system. So, in terms of sa network engineer naman, you design and build computer networks. Kung network administrator ka naman, you administer and do changes sa pre-existing network, yung naka-install na. Okay? Pero pag engineer, usually, ang ginagawa dyan, you're in charge of installing the device and designing the network itself. Pero really, in terms of sa real life, napapag-interchange yung ibig sabihin ng engineer and administrator. So, sa mga job posting na nakikita nyo sa JobStreet or sa Indeed, makikita nyo doon na kuminsan yung tawag sa position is a network engineer, kuminsan naman sinasabi network administrator. Pero kung titignan nyo yung requirements ng mga companies, it's almost exactly the same. So, ang nangyayari dito na pag-i-interchange yung ibig sabihin ng network engineer, network administrator, it sometimes becomes synonymous with each other. Ibig sabihin, halos magkaparehas na yung ibig sabihin nila. Okay? Wala na yung official delimitation ng dalawang position na to. Whether you're called a network engineer or network administrator, you must be able to design, build, and maintain computer networks. Yun naman ang importante. At the end of the day, you must be able to design, build, and maintain computer networks. So, ang network engineer, ang trabaho niya sa isang IT company is siya ang in charge in terms of connectivity. Connectivity means siya yung in charge sa flow ng information between the different systems na ginagamit sa isang IT infrastructure. From server to PC, from router to switch, from switch to Wi-Fi. For example, yung interconnectivity ng mga devices na to, okay, si network administrator ang in charge dito. Siya ang bahala sa data in transit, kumbaga. Habang dumadaan yung data sa computer network mo, siya ang bahalang siya ang nagme-maintain nun. Okay? Yung pagdaloy ng traffic. Kumbaga sa katawan natin, yung network engineer is really siya yung spinal cord or yung nerve system natin. Okay? Siya yung nagpapadaloy ng dugo, for example. Okay? So, hindi naman yung okay. Pero really, kung saan dumadaan yung data natin, usually si network engineer ang in charge doon sa area na yun. And network engineers are also in charge of designing the network. Ibig sabihin, how do you interconnect yung mga different devices in your network together? How do you get your users to have an internet connection? Si network engineer or administrator ang in charge doon. How does your servers or your website get accessed over the internet? Si network administrator at saka si network engineer ang bahala doon. Okay? How do you separate yung mga different departments sa loob ng isang company? So, separate mo yung accounting versus the IT versus the management versus the finance. Si network engineer ang bahala doon. Okay? Data segmentation. So, ayun, nagbe-build din siya ng computer networks ranging from a network sa isang building to something called a large network or a very large network that can span multiple buildings or multiple locations sa isang country, or it can span the globe itself. Ganon din sa yung mga ibang network engineers din naman natin, yung mga hindi pumasok sa mga companies or they went into the internet service providers, sila naman ang bahalang in charge of managing yung interconnectivity ng ISPs. For example, si PLDT. May marami siyang mga network engineers in charge of connectivity between Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. Parang ganun. Okay, so, dito naman sa display natin, this is more, I think nakuha ko to sa AT&T. Okay, so this is the AT&T network. Okay, for the United States. So, makikita ninyo, marami tayong interconnectivity between the various large cities. So, ang nagme-maintain din ng mga networks na to, yung mga ganitong networks na kalalaki, are network engineers pa rin. Okay. And sometimes, yung mga network engineers, once they work with ISPs, sometimes they need to work with other ISPs as well, and that will result in what we call the internet. So, kung nakikita nyo dito sa screen, this is actually the actual map, okay? Or partly the map of the internet. Ang tawag dito is the submarine cables na nakalatag sa dagat, and it connects all of the different countries together in terms of the internet itself. So you can think of this one as the internet backbone, okay, ng ating internet. Kumbaga, this is really the spinal cord ng internet natin. Okay, this is the actual visual diagram of the internet itself. And ang mga nagme-maintain ng mga to are called network engineers. Okay, so hindi naman ibig sabihin na kung ganong kalaking networks ang i-maintain mo, mag-isa mo lang na i-maintain yun. Not really necessary. Hindi lang naman ikaw ang network engineer usually sa isang kumpanya. Okay? Kung maliit yung kumpanya nyo, then probably mag-isa mo lang na network engineer. Pero kung malaking kumpanya yung napasukan mo, or an ISP itself, or a service provider, usually marami kayong network engineers dyan that are helping maintain lahat ng systems in terms of the computer network itself. Yung interconnectivity ng routers between the carriers, yung mga access switches ninyo, Wi-Fi systems, internet security, yan, puro network engineers. Marami kayong network engineers. Ang tawag dito is something called a NOC, Network Operations Center. Okay, so, nagbigay lang ako ng sample dyan. And, really, yung trabaho ng network engineer is more on the interconnectivity ng mga devices sa computer network natin. So, yun ang primary job scope ng network engineer, connectivity. How do data transfer from one system to another? So, how do they do that? By doing routing and switching. They also do network design and IP addressing para they can actually design larger and larger networks and do IP addressing on each of the different users and systems that will be using that network. And also, they are in charge sometimes of the network cabling and ISP connections. So, yung network cabling, i-specify ko lang dito, hindi necessary pala yung network engineers na sila yung nagkakable mismo ng buong network. Okay? We have specialized staff for that one. Pero once you are a network engineer, you need to know how your network is cabled together or connected together. So, dapat may in-depth knowledge ka kung ano yung cabling ginamit doon, or kung anong cable type man yan, or anong media type man ang ginamit nyo for communicating from one system to another. Dapat alam mo yan. And that's part of network cabling. Okay? Ganun din sa ISP connections. Kung mag-order ka ng internet connection kay PLDT or Globe, you have to specify kay Globe gaano kabilis, ilang bandwidth, ano yung service level agreement for that specific internet connection, and so on and so forth. Yung mga internet connections natin as a network engineer, once you're working in the IT industry already, hindi na ito yung mga tigo 1,500. Okay? We're talking about a different kind of internet connections, yung mga enterprise grade internet connections. It can range from 30,000 pesos to around 1 million to 2 million pesos per month. Okay, mga ganong kalalaking internet connections. Okay, or point-to-point connections. Depende kung ano ang i-require mo kay PLDT or Globe. Okay. Network engineers are also in charge then of IT security sa isang kumpanya. Sometimes when you're working with a very large company, usually sinesegregate ito. Iba yung mga network engineers, iba rin yung department ng IT security. Pero medyo related kasi itong dalawang positions na to, kaya kung minsan napagsasabay sila or napagsasama sila. So, IT security, a network engineer is in charge of making sure that the network is secure and clean and nakapatch lahat yung vulnerabilities para hindi basta-basta nahahack yung kumpanya. Okay? So, ito lang kailangan ko sabihin sa inyo, no system is 100% unhackable. Okay? Merong chance yan na mahahack. Okay? So, kasi there's no such thing as a completely secure system. Kaya, IT security is always changing, always evolving, and network engineers and administrators are the forefront, kumbaga, sa isang kumpanya in terms of IT security. Now, network engineers din are sometimes in charge of the data center itself kasi sila yung pinaka-senior sa loob ng isang data center. They dictate how the systems inside the data center are interconnected together. So, you need to know also how does a data center work, ano yung mga cooling requirements, rack requirements, cable type requirements, spacing ng mga equipments. So, kung minsan si network engineer ang bahala dyan. And, ayun din, unti-unti na rin nagiging requirement ang pagiging specialist ng isang network engineer in terms of wireless kasi sa parami ng mga mobile devices natin, mga laptops, there's a critical need, okay, for wireless interconnectivity for our devices. Kaya usually si network engineer din ang nagiging in charge dyan. And ganun din in terms of sa voice over IP. Minsan si network engineer din ang nagiging in charge dito in terms of yung telephony, IP telephony, voice over IP, SIP communications, yan. Minsan si network engineer nag-handle nun. Although pag pumasok ka sa isang malaking kumpanya, usually naka-segregate ito. Merong tinatawag na position called a voice engineer versus a network engineer. So technically si voice engineer is ang hawak lang niya is yung voice aspects ng network, while si network engineer handles the data part of the network. Pero kung minsan ayun nga, pagkasama yung dalawang specialty na to together, okay, as a multiple skill set ng isang network engineer. So let's talk about connectivity muna, yung number 1. Ang usually na ma-handle mo as a network engineer in terms of connectivity is yung routers and switches natin. Okay. So routers are in charge of directing traffic, while switches naman are in charge of connecting your users to the network. Yun ang basic description ng routers and switches. Now, in terms of connectivity din, si network engineer din ang bahalang mag-dictate kung anong type ng cable ang gagamitin in terms of sa copper or gagamit ba yung network ng fiber connectivity. So, yun yung dalawang choices natin, copper or fiber. Okay, actually, may pangatlo which is wireless, pero I'll explain that one later. And yun din, in charge sa network engineer in terms of designing the network. Okay, how are all of the IT equipments interconnected together in the computer network? Okay, so yung network engineer usually ang gumagawa ng drawings tungkol dito. And siya yung maglalagay ng specific IP addressing, kung ano yung IP address ng server, ano yung IP address ng mga users, ano yung IP address ng internet connection, and how do you translate that from an outside IP to an inside IP sa loob ng network ninyo by using something called network address translation. Si network engineer din ang bahala dyan. Okay. So, ayun nga, katulad na sinasabi ko sa inyo, network engineers must have a knowledge in terms of structured cabling, pero not necessarily na sila gagawa lahat ng kable ng in terms of copper or UTP or STP, shielded twisted pair or unshielded twisted pair or fiber optic cable. Hindi sila yung gumagawa na. Okay, we have a dedicated position for that one called the structured cabling technician. So usually ang ginagawa ng isang malaking kumpanya, they actually outsource yung pag-layout ng mga network cables natin tsaka fiber connections to a third-party vendor or a contractor. And usually yung contractor na yon has a structured cabling engineer who is in charge of doing all of the cabling sa network. Si network engineer lang magde-dictate ano yung connectivity nito, anong type ng cable yung para dito, and so on and so forth. Okay? So, network engineers are more on the maintenance of the cables, not necessarily on the actual creation of the cable itself. Okay? So, si structured cabling technicians ang bahala natin. Okay? Yung mga outsourced natin third-party vendors. So, ayan din. Si network engineer is in charge of network IT security. So, usually sila ang in charge sa firewalls natin at saka sa IDS or IPS. Anong ibig sabihin ng IDS, IPS? IDS is Intrusion Detection System. IPS naman, ang ibig sabihin nito is Intrusion Prevention System. So, we'll discuss this more pagdating sa network security videos natin. Pero, think of it this way. Firewalls are basically yung bakod ng network mo. Okay? You dictate sinong kailangan pumasok coming from the internet, going into your network, and who needs to go out into your network. Okay? Ganun din, you can build also firewalls inside your network itself to control sinong may access sa specific server na to, sinong may access sa specific database na to. Doon ginagamit yung mga firewalls. Now, IDS, IPS naman, ang ibig sabihin nito is, you can think of this one as the antivirus of the network. Kung may antivirus ka sa computer mo, okay, so whether you're using AVG, Avast, Kaspersky, Norton, okay, those are for the PCs. Pero meron din tayong tinatawag na security feature sa network called an IDS or IPS. Ang trabaho nito is to scan malware, scan incoming and outgoing packets, and either detect or prevent, okay, from those malicious packets or programs from spreading into your network. Okay, so it can stop attacks. It cannot actually stop all of the attacks 100%. Okay, but it stops attacks happening into your network. Okay, si IPS ang bahala doon. IDS naman is more on detection, while IPS is more on prevention. Okay, pero that's a segment for another video. I don't want to dive into that one kasi network security is a very big world. Okay, sub-world kumbaga. Okay, or sub-topic under network engineering and administration. So, usually then, si network engineer ang bahala sa end-user IT security. So, usually he deploys something called a proxy, which is a middleman for internet connections ng kumpanya ninyo. We'll discuss this more on a future video. Ang target lang naman natin dito sa video na to is to give you an overview of what kung ano yung isang network engineer, ano yung trabaho niya. Now, proxy, yun nga, parang middleman, para hindi direktang kumukonekta yung mga users mo, okay, sa network to the internet itself. Kailangan na dumaan sa proxy, then si proxy ang bahalang kumonect sa internet. So that shields your users from malicious software, and hindi basta-basta na-expose yung mga end users mo to the internet itself. Ganun din, si network engineer din ang bahala in terms of endpoint security ang tawag natin. So usually siyang nagde-deploy or in charge sa mga antivirus ng mga computer sa isang company, whether they're running McAfee, Avast, Sophos, Bitdefender, Trend Micro, or Norton. Usually si network engineer ang bahala dyan. Nagme-maintain ng system na yan. Now, hindi naman siya yung technically nag-install ng bawat antivirus sa each computer. Trabaho yun ng desktop engineer. Si network engineer siya yung bahala doon sa server kung saan naka-host centrally yung antivirus packages ng bawat user mo, o yung pinaka-central system ng endpoint security program mo. Tapos doon kumo-connect yung mga end users mo to get yung mga updates nila in terms of the latest antivirus patches, mga ganyan. Okay, so usually si network engineer ang bahala din sa endpoint security systems. Now, si network engineer din ang bahala sa data center, as I've said. Usually siya nag-design, okay, and nag-maintain ng data centers itself. Okay, so yung advanced, this is more of an advanced skill set ng pagiging isang network engineer. Okay, ang tawag dito is a data center engineer na. Okay, we'll discuss that more in a future video. Now, also, since nagiging popular ang wireless natin, so network engineers are also in charge of the wireless system. Usually yung wireless enterprise networks siyang in charge dyan. And if he dives really deep enough sa wireless, he can now be touching base in terms of yung sa wireless or radio frequency networking, where ito is more on the domain na ng ISP. Okay, so kung nagtatrabaho ka sa isang internet service provider, then you're more into the ISP networks already. Okay, wireless and cellular communications or mobile communications, kung gusto yung term na yun, yung much more simpler term. So ano yung mga skill sets na kailangan sa pagiging isang network engineer? So I'll be dividing this into basic and advanced skill sets. Okay, ang ibig sabihin ng basic skill sets is this is the skill sets that you need to become a network engineer. Ang ibig sabihin naman ng advanced skill sets is you don't need to have this, pero it's a welcome skill set that you need to have. Okay? And it's a requirement for future skill sets that you will be, or future careers that you will be diving into. Yun ang ibig sabihin ng basic and advanced. Basic is para maging network engineer ka or makakuha ka ng trabaho as a network engineer. This is the skills that you need. Sa advanced naman is ito yung mga skill sets na kakailanganin mo in the future for you to progress sa iyong career as a network engineer. So let's talk about yung basic skill sets. Ano yung basic skill sets na una? Ang pinakauna is OSI layer. OSI layer basically explains how data is transferred from one computer to another. From a server to a router, from a router to a switch, from a switch to an end user. May explain mo lahat yan in terms of the OSI layers. Okay, dito dinidictate or dito talaga binibreakdown ano yung pinagdadaanan ng data mo coming from the program itself all the way, how does your data transfer from the program all the way to the individual cable na ginagamit mo, okay, to connect the pieces together and back into its original form of data. So OSI layers are very important topic that you need to learn by heart, okay, being as a network engineer. Okay, it's a very important topic. Okay, dyan mo makikita paano nag-work yung network mo, saan nagkakaroon ng problema, how does your data transform from one device to another. Lahat yan may explain sa OSI layer. Okay. Ano pa? You need to be proficient sa command line interface. Itong screen na nakikita nyo ngayon, may picture dyan. It shows exactly what you will see and what you will be manipulating as a network engineer. Okay? Yan lang ang screen na lagi mo tinitignan. Okay? Sinasabi ko na sa inyo, yan lang ang screen na lagi nyo tinitignan as a network engineer. Whenever you're trying to change something or trying to route data into another part of your network, yan, dyan mo siya minamanipulate sa command line interface na yan. Ganun din, you need to also be proficient in the different brands ng networking equipment. Okay? Hindi lang naman si Cisco kasi ang manufacturer ng networking equipment. Marami pa tayong vendors dyan, coming from Huawei, Sophos, ano pa ba yung iba? HP, Dell, may mga networking equipments din yung mga yan. Okay? And many more other brands. So, dapat proficient ka in terms of trying to buy, ano ba yung eksaktong equipment na kailangan mong bilhin for that specific requirement ng network mo. Okay, so yun yung isang skill sets na kailangan nyo. Ganun din sa pagpili ng type of cable or media na gagamitin mo to interconnect your devices together. So may tatlo kang flavors. You can use yung copper, fiber optic, or wireless. And syempre, yung tatlong ito, may sub-types yan. Okay? So meron kang shielded twisted pair, unshielded twisted pair sa copper. Sa fiber optic, meron kang multi-mode and single-mode fiber optics. Then sa wireless, meron kang yung different types of Wi-Fi signals, okay, or standards, whether you're using 802.11g or 802.11ac or 802.11ax. You have to have basic understanding of those things. Okay? Kasi this is how data gets transmitted. Dito dumadaan ang data mo, whether dadaan yan sa copper, fiber, or wireless. Okay. Ganun din, in terms of designing the network, you need to have a good grasp on how to build and design computer networks and how to provision IP addressing for them. Nakita nyo dito sa picture natin, nilagay ko yung core, distribution, and access layer. You need to know ano yung difference ng mga to, ng tatlong layers na to from each other, and saan siya dapat ginagamit. Saan dapat kinokonekta ang mga users sa tatlong layers na to, saan kinokonekta ang servers, and saan kinokonekta ang internet connections. So, kaya may kanya-kanyang location dapat yung tatlong yun sa tatlong layers na to. You will also be dealing more, okay, actually not more, every day, okay, you will be reading IP addresses. Kasi this is how the internet really works and how computer networks work. Okay? They deal with IP addresses. Okay? So you need to be able to manipulate IP addresses and read IP addresses. How does your data move from one part of your network to another by IP addresses? Okay? Ito ang magiging guideline ng mga computers mo on how to pass data. Okay? IP addressing. Kasi if you have a good grasp of basic network design, okay, you can actually scale yung network mo ng palaki. So, makita nyo dito, this is a very simple network sa una, then it gets more complicated. Pero it's still following the same layers, core, distribution, and access. Then, as you grow your network and lumalaki Yung network nyo naman, lumalaki to habang lumalaki rin yung kumpanya nyo. Okay? It's not a sudden growth na biglang mangyayari. Okay? As your company grows and your network grows, lumalaki yung network niyo to something like this. Okay? So, this is where, siguro itong network na to is more into a multinational company already that has offices in sa Pilipinas, sa Singapore, sa Hong Kong, and all of them are interconnected together in one very giant big network. Okay? So, yung network na mini-maintain ko ngayon is a global network. So, meron kaming data centers and networks sa US. Meron din kami dito sa Asia Pacific, sa India, and sa EMEA. Okay? Sa Europe. Okay? So, meron din kami sa Latin America and China. Okay? So, ganun kalaki yung mga networks na mini-maintain ko as a network administrator. And eventually, you will also be maintaining something like something big like this, okay, as you progress in your career as a network engineer. So, ano pa? You need to have also good grasp of routing protocols. So, you need to know ano ibig sabihin ng RIP, EIGRP, OSPF, ISIS, BGP, ano ang link state versus distance vector protocol, ano ang path vector protocol. Kasi itong routing protocols na to, this is how really the internet works. BGP is the primary routing protocol of the internet, while majority of companies are either using EIGRP or OSPF to maintain yung data communication sila and how the data goes to what part of the network, okay, via routing protocols. Okay, so you need to have a good grasp of routing protocols. Kasi this is really the basis of the internet. How this network works, kung makikita nyo to, yung submarine cable map. How your data moves from one point to another, from Philippines to Spain, from India to the US, routing protocols ang bahala ron. Primarily BGP. And you need to have a good understanding of that one. Ano naman yung mga advanced skills? Okay? So, yun yung mga skills that are the basic requirements to become a network engineer. Now, let's go naman to the advanced skills. Itong advanced skills, ito yung mga skills na kakailanganin mo in the future as a network engineer to progress yung path mo further and further as you become more and more proficient as a network engineer. Kasi maraming trabaho na magiging open in terms of in the future for you as a network engineer. Hindi ka lang magsistay primarily as a network engineer. You will be actually acquiring more skills that will actually be very helpful in your progression sa career mo. Okay? So, as a network engineer, you can level up to become a data center engineer. Okay? So, for example, gusto mo mag-maintain ng data center ni Google, ni Microsoft, or ni Amazon. Okay? So, network engineers are in charge of those. Okay? Yung mga networks na ganun kalalaki. Okay? So, from a network engineer, you level up to become a data center engineer, for example. Okay? Ano pa yung next level of progression mo? You also can become a wireless network administrator. So, basically, ibig sabihin nito, you become more proficient in knowing how Wi-Fi works. Okay? Hindi yung Wi-Fi sa pag-iisang network engineer, hindi ito yung salpak ka lang na salpak ng Wi-Fi. Okay? Those days are over. Okay? Yun yung mga pang-amateur na network administrator. But as a professional network engineer that specializes in Wi-Fi, you will now understand ano yung mga different signal strengths, ano yung mga different signal types, and mga protocols na ginagamit natin, anong pagkakaiba ng 802.11ac enabled access point versus 802.11ax access point, for example. Ano ang ibig sabihin ng 802.11n versus ano yung improvement ng 802.11n, I mean, okay? And ano yung improvements ng 802.11ac. Okay, so malalaman mo yan lahat, okay, as a wireless administrator. Yun din, dito mo rin makikita ano ang pagkakaiba ng consumer-based Wi-Fi versus enterprise-grade Wi-Fi. Okay? Bakit hindi tayo masyadong gumagamit ng consumer-based Wi-Fi sa malalaking kumpanya? Ang ginagamit lahat is enterprise-grade Wi-Fi. Ano yung difference ng dalawang ito? Okay? So, dito mo malalaman yun as a network engineer. And if you really dive deep enough, okay, sa pagiging isang wireless administrator, dito mo na makikita or ma-experience how does the environment affect yung Wi-Fi signal mo. Paano ba tumatagos gaano ba kalakas tumagos ang isang Wi-Fi signal kung gumagamit ka ng simple flyboard na dingding versus a concrete flyboard or a steel deck flyboard. Paano ba ang spread ng Wi-Fi connection for a small room? Paano na-influence, okay? Or na-influensyahan ng mga gamit sa loob ng isang kwarto ang isang Wi-Fi signal? Dito mo yan nakikita. Okay? Actually, I have a video about this one dito sa aking YouTube channel. You can actually search for that one. Network wireless survey ng tawag. And if you really dive deep enough into wireless, you actually can touch base already in terms of point-to-point links and wireless bridges or wireless links and cellular data communications. Ito yung next level na pwede mo puntahan. Okay? So you now become an RF engineer, a radio frequency engineer, or a wireless engineer, or a wireless network engineer, or network wireless architect. Okay? Yung nagde-design ka na ng topology ng mga cell towers, paano interconnectivity ng bawat cell tower, mga ganyan. Gaano kalawak ang spread ng LTE signal mo. Okay? Yan. That's another progression sa pagiging isang network engineer. Ganun din sa telephony systems and mobile systems. You now become proficient in terms of voice over IP. Okay? That's another step up sa pagiging isang network engineer. And ganun din in terms of pero ang pinaka malaking step that you can actually take as a network engineer is you can now dive into network security, computer security, information security, cyber security, and basically IT security in general. Okay? So dito na papasok yung penetration testing, hacking, bug hunting, mga ganyan. Okay? Hindi ko naman sinasabing requirement yung pagiging isang network engineer para makapag-hack ka, or para maging isang white hat ka, or para maging isang gray hatter ka, or black hatter ka. No, I'm not saying that way. You can actually learn how to become a black, a gray, or a white without being a network engineer. Pero if you get network engineering skills first, then you become an ethical hacker, or a gray hatter, or a black hatter. Mas madali mo siyang maintindihan. Okay? Kasi may background ka na how communication works between the different computers. So what do you expect when you get hired? Unang-una, hindi ka na frontliner, same as a system administrator. So yung mga frontliners natin, yung mga desktop support engineers. Pero ikaw, nasa likod ka na ng ng desktop support engineers, ikaw na yung bahala sa network. So you still na desktop ang bahala nagpipid sa'yo ng information. And then, ayun din, you're now administering computer networks. Okay? Pag network administrator ka, and usually network administrators, ito yung mga beginners sa network natin, they are in charge of maintenance and troubleshooting ng existing network. Pero once you have gathered enough skills already as a network administrator, then you can now transition as a network engineer. Then from there, you can now start to design your very own networks and do IT consulting for IT projects. Okay? And you can now start to design large and complex computer systems like this one. Okay? Now, katulad dun sa system administrator, meron din tayong levels sa sinusunod sa network, sa pagiging isang network engineer or network administrator. So, meron tayong level 1 support. This is usually yung mga low-level network engineers natin. Then, as you progress and get enough skills, you get promoted as a level 2 or a senior network engineer. Then, you become a level 3 support or a network architect, for example. Okay? Okay? So, yan yung mga IT support levels natin. Wait, naghang yung aking PowerPoint. Okay, so next. Now, majority of the networking equipment na mahahawakan mo sa IT industry is galing kay Cisco. Now, bakit galing kay Cisco? Kasi si Cisco ang pinaka-naunang gumawa ng networking equipments actually. Siyang inventor ng router actually. Okay, noong 1980s. Kaya, since siyang nauna, okay, in terms of market share, talagang si Cisco pa rin ang nangunguna. Okay, bar none. And in terms of teaching also computer networking and how to become a network engineer and learning all of the fundamentals ng pagiging isang network engineer or administrator, si Cisco pa rin talaga ang pinaka-the best in terms of teaching, really, computer networking. Ganun din pag magba-branch out ka na sa ibang technologies, whether gusto mo nang maging cybersecurity, wireless administrator, ano pa ba? Data center, and many more others in terms yung mga specialties in terms of network engineering, Cisco pa rin. Doon mo talaga matututunan. Ang dami niyang certification tracks that you can take to specialize as a network engineer. Optional mo na to branch out to other technologies as well. Kunyari, sa workplace mo, you have a checkpoint firewall or you have a checkpoint, or you have a Fortinet firewall, kunyari. Meron ka din, kunyari, yung companies nyo rin have Juniper switches or Huawei devices, then that's the time you branch out to those technologies or brands. Pero, really, all of those brands, yung mga switches nila and routers nila, are patterned according to how Cisco operates. So, yun ang kagandahan ng Cisco eh. Just learn Cisco once and you can use it over and over and over again kahit ibang brand yan. Okay? Kasi all of them are trying to copy Cisco because of its success and how Cisco is being utilized, and basically parang kinopy nila talaga in terms of the CLI, how the networks and routers work, yung mga routing protocols. Okay? So, Cisco pa rin talaga. Okay? Now, career paths and IT certificate, career paths and IT certifications that you need to take to become a network engineer or a network administrator. Isa lang naman ang kailangan yung pag-aralan eh. Cisco. Okay? Cisco is the gold standard in terms of learning network engineering and administration. So, makikita niyo dito, marami tayong paths that you can take, pero kunyari fresh grad ka and you want to become a network engineer, then I would recommend you get your CCNA certifications first. Then once you're already working as a network engineer, then that's the time you specialize and take your CCNP and CCIE. CCIE is yung pinakamataas. There are only, I'm not sure if this is the correct number, there are only around 80,000 or 90,000 CCIE certified engineers all over the globe. Hindi ko lang alam kung tama yung number ko. I'm not really updated already in terms of yung number ng CCIE. Okay. Now, that's for the engineering, the network engineering part. Cisco also opened already yung software side ng certification paths niya that you can take. This is more into the DevNet, okay? Developing network, okay? Yun ang ibig sabihin ng DevNet, developing networks in terms of sa software, okay? Kung sa Amazon meron tayong DevOps, sa Cisco naman meron tayong DevNet, okay? Developing network softwares, okay? So, software side yan, okay? So, ano pa? In terms of the software path, optional lang naman to. You don't really need to study this immediately. Pero once you are in the field already, ang recommendation ko sa inyo is you need to take Python. Kasi computer networks today are evolving, and one of the evolution paths that is being really heavily utilized today is yung automation. Yung pag-automate ng lahat ng networking equipment and network aspects ng isang computer network, we are doing that via Python. So, ang daming pwedeng gawin sa Python. Kaya makikita nyo halos lahat ng previous videos ko, halos nilalagay ko lahat ng Python kasi Python is really ang laki ng potential in terms of automation and big data. Now, once you are comfortable already and an expert already in terms of Cisco technologies, you can now also branch out to other brands as well. So, nakikita nyo rito, kunyari, gusto mong gamitin naman yung mga Ubiquiti wireless access points, then you go with Ubiquiti, you study Ubiquiti. If you want to go with Dell networking in terms of switches, kasi may nagbenta sa inyo ng sa Cisco, then yun nakuha ng inyong company, then you start learning Dell. Pero yung interface niya is exactly the same pa rin as Cisco. Ganun din kay HP Networking. Huawei is also another networking company. Okay, and yung interface niya is also exactly the same as Cisco. Ganun din sa Sophos, Checkpoint also has a CLI, F5 has a CLI, ano pa ba? Palo Alto has CLI, Fortinet has CLI. CLI actually started with Cisco. So, really, at the heart of everything, yun lang ang kailangan mong pag-aralan. If you learn Cisco and you become an expert as a Cisco, it will become very easy for you to branch out to any networking technology out there. So, yun, that's how you become a network engineer. Cisco lang ang kailangan mong pag-aralin. Now, in terms of skill sets, ano yung mga kailangan mo in terms of sa work? Nako, may typo na naman ako dito. Tech support. Anyways, isipin nyo na lang, network engineer yan. Pero, yung skill sets that you need to have, this is just a summary of what we have discussed. Networking assembly, you need to also have a very good networking fundamentals, network expertise in terms of yung hardware, cabling, and the various devices. Okay, and technologies in terms of yung design, you need to be very good at those. Ganun din sa network routing, You need to be very good at network routing kasi that's how you will route. Okay? Route packets or forward packets to their destination. Okay? So, almost any network, computer network is running on a certain routing protocol. Pati yung internet natin is running on a networking protocol, which is BGP. Ano pa? Structured cabling. You need to know yung difference ng shielded, unshielded twisted pair, ano yung difference ng Cat5, Cat6, Cat7, ano yung mga maximum lengths nila, ano pa, you also need to know fiber optic, ano ang ibig sabihin ng single mode, when do you use single mode, when do you use multi-mode fiber optic cables, gaano kahaba ang maximum length for multi-mode and single mode, ganun din sa wireless, okay, enterprise Wi-Fi, how do you deploy Wi-Fi to the best possible effect para mas maraming makover ng inyong Wi-Fi signal. And you also have to implement Wi-Fi security for that one. Kasi hindi na pwede yung basta-basta user password. Okay? As much as possible sa enterprise Wi-Fi, we use yung Windows login credentials natin to log into the Wi-Fi system itself. Or we use something called Radius or Takax. Depende kung anong ginagamit natin. Ayan, structured cabling. I also have a separate video playlist for the structured cabling. You can go to that video. I might be putting it at the top dito. Okay, yung maliit na card dyan para mapuntahan nyo yung playlist na yun. I teach there specifically shielded, unshielded twisted pair and how I cabled a certain hotel project of mine na napanalunan namin in my company. And marami pa akong tutorials doon in terms of structured cabling. Ganun din, IT security and cybersecurity is a more advanced skill set that you need to learn. Okay, you don't have to learn it immediately, but you have to learn it in the future. Okay, ganun din sa data center. Kasi ito yung mga that you can branch out into. Okay, from the network engineering career. Ano pa? You can go with radio frequency and ISP networking. So, kung gusto mo nang mag-work with PLDT or Globe in terms of their mobile networks or their fiber optic networks and specifically yung routing nila with the BGP and interfacing with other tier 2 and tier 1 ISPs all around the globe, then you can branch out to that path as well. In terms of the soft skills naman, ganun pa rin, ability to learn new things. Sa IT, we don't stop learning. Kasi yung pace of technology natin is so fast that yung napag-aralan mo 2 years ago might not necessarily be true today. Okay? So, kung napag-aralan mo yan 2 years ago, it might be outdated already. Ganun kabilis yung technology natin. Ano pa? People skills. Kasi you will be communicating with the different people sa IT department ninyo. Okay? As much as possible, you need to have a harmonious relationship with them kasi at the end of the day, lahat kayo IT sa IT department. Okay? Kung nag-aaway-away kayo, it will really affect the whole IT department. Okay? Kasi hindi mabubuhay ang IT department with a single department only. Okay? Hindi mabubuhay ang isang IT department na isang network engineer lang. Okay? Yung system administrator, yung desktop administrator, yung network administrator, lahat yan has a part to play sa isang IT department. And as much as possible, you need to be harmonious with each other. Kaya kailangan nyo ng people skills. Ano pa? Problem solving skills. You will be troubleshooting issues and incidents na it will be so bizarre na hindi siya makikita sa kahit anong forums or kahit anong libro tungkol sa computer networking. Ito ang kailangan yung tandaan in terms of sa IT world. Hindi porket nakasulat yan sa libro, totoo yan. Okay? There will be some weird things that will happen sa network ninyo. Okay? Na it's written sa libro that it's supposed to work like this, pero it's actually working on a very different way. Okay? So, may encounter mo yan in real life. Okay? Hindi lahat nakasulat sa libro. Yun yung kailangan nyo tandaan. Pero really, you have to be very good at solving things and eliminating what is the cause of the incident or the problem. Ganun din, kung hindi mo talaga siya ma-troubleshoot, then you need to research. Do your research and escalate as necessary to the various vendors para ma-resolve yung issue ninyo. Ganun din, you need to have good analytical skills kasi you need to isolate the fault. Okay? You have to remove or you have to really identify all the possible root causes of the issue or the single root cause of the issue kung isa lang talaga, and eliminate all other reasons kung bakit hindi yun yung rason kung bakit bumagsak yung network mo or nag-flap yung interface mo. Ay marami kayong data na you need to analyze. Okay? Kasi kukuha ka rin ng Wireshark captures, PCAT captures, you will be reading logs all day long. Ano pa ba? You will be trying to interpret yung description ng issue and turn it into something that you can use to help you in troubleshooting. So, good analytical skills. So, that's it muna for this video. Hopefully, nalinawan kayo kung paano maging isang network engineer. Some people actually make it complicated na marami ka daw kailangan aralin before you can become a network engineer, or you need to have experience to become a network engineer. It's not true. Even kung fresh grad ka, okay, you can actually take online courses ng mga Cisco, okay, Cisco online courses to really train yourself to become a network engineer. Kasi for majority of schools, alam ko hindi tinuturo ang Cisco sa kanilang curriculum. There are only a couple of colleges and universities in the Philippines that actually integrate Cisco computer networking, Cisco certifications in their curriculum. Yung school ko dito sa Baguio, University of Baguio, is a NetAcad partner. So, nung college ako, actually, wala akong nagustuhan kahit anong subject except yung NetAcad ko na course, which is yung modules 1 to 4 ng NetAcad. Okay, NetAcad is, ito yung networking academy ng Cisco. It's a partnership between a university and Cisco so that the university can teach Cisco certification courses, okay, and embed it sa kanilang curriculum. So, napakalaking tulong nung Cisco NetAcad para sa akin. That's why up until now, even 15 years after I have finished my NetAcad, I'm still a NetAcad instructor. Okay? And I'm also, hindi ko na ilagay dun sa slides natin, I'm also a CCSI, okay, a Cisco certified instructor. Okay? So aside from being a NetAcad instructor, I'm also a Cisco certified instructor. So I can teach Cisco networking. Okay? So tinuturo ko yan sa aking IT training school. Okay? Pero really, ang aim ko for this channel, yung YouTube channel ko na to, is to help you guys make the correct decision to switch into the IT world or to the IT industry and pick a career path that you can that you really love, that you really like. Okay? Huwag kayong papadala na maganda daw yung ganito, maganda daw yung ito, kaya ganito. Kunin mong course or ganitong kunin mong certification. No. Listen to your heart kasi that will really help you stay longer sa career path mo. Kasi if you choose the wrong career path, you might not like it, and you might start looking again for another career path. Pero ang kagandahan din naman sa IT, kung nagkamali ka ng career path, it's very easy to get to the correct career path that you like. Okay? Kasi yun ang kagandahan sa IT, you don't have to start from scratch. Okay? So kunyari napunta ka sa software but napagtuntong mo na gusto mo ng hardware, then you only take online courses, then you can now easily switch to hardware. Ganun din kung nasa hardware ka, you found out that you like software, then you take additional online courses lang, then you can now switch to software. So we can swing back to back actually from hardware to software. So also make sure you visit pala my website, Lou Beltran, the IT Veteran. I'm gonna be putting it here. Okay? And make sure to grab my ebook, Interview Scripts and Salary Negotiation Tactics for IT Professionals. Itong ebook ko na to is free. You can download this one for free. This will actually teach you ano yung mga common interview questions na tinatanong ng HR during an IT interview para alam niyo siyang sagutan in advance. And you can practice at home before you go to your interview. And yung second half ng aking ebook pala is called yung Salary Negotiation Tactics. So if ever man ikaw na yung final candidate sa position na in-applyan mo, wag mong kaagad signan yung contract na ibibigay sa'yo. Okay, yung job offer contract. Make sure na humirit ka ng konting salary negotiation. Okay? Kasi yung konting mahihirit mo na yon in terms of increase ng salary mo before you sign yung contract mo, can actually help you pay yung mobile bills mo, extra panggas ng motor o sasakyan mo, extra pang commute, or any other things that you want to use. Okay? Kasi majority for the last 15 years na aking career, majority ng mga hiner ko na IT in my company, and yung mga trainin ko na IT staff ng full-time work ko sa BPO, ang napansin ko talaga is once na binigay yung job contract sa kanila, they immediately accept and sign it. They don't actually even read the contract and try to negotiate yung salary. Okay? Ang truth lang doon is that actually yung budget for them was actually a little bit higher. Pero since napababa ko yung salary nila, ayan, it's a savings for the IT department. Okay? Pero really, almost always lahat ng trabaho, when they offer you the job, yung contract ninyo, actually meron pang konting leeway yan that you can negotiate. Okay? So, hirit ka lang ng mga konti lang. Okay? Para hindi naman sayang yung pinagpaguran mo yung process. Okay? Kasi a little bit goes a long way. Okay? In terms of yung salary ninyo. So, that's it for this video. Hopefully nagustuhan nyo siya, and I'll see you in the next lesson.